U.S. Representative Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin joining us here on Mike and John Got It Going On. Good morning, Elissa. How's it going?
Good morning. I'm good. I hope you guys are well.
Well, we're in a basement doing a podcast.
Yes. When are you coming for the tour?
If you invite me, I'm happy to come see the luxurious basement.
Okay. She's now feverishly making a note saying, please make sure that I'm not available to go into a basement. I am better than that.
With two former radio guys.
Yeah.
Actually, we're probably pretty safe down here. We got a lot of topics to cover, obviously. So,
but before we get to the serious stuff,
okay.
I think we really have to ask you about Gizzard Fest.
Gizzard Fest?
Yes.
Yeah.
You were recently, I think that's in Potterville, is it not?
It is.
Yeah.
All right. How many people were there?
A lot, actually. It was a big, there's a parade and a whole kind of like little market that they set up for vendors, and it was just like felt like a big chunk of the community was there.
Yeah. Now,
it turned out a bunch of volunteers. It was great.
Was there a Miss Gizzard? Like a Miss Gizzard competition?
There was a couple of different folks. I don't think it was Miss Gizzard, but there was some royalty, and there was a giant float of a chicken. Of course, you have to.
Now we want to ask you. We don't want to put you on the spot, but we're going to put you on the spot. Exactly what is a gizzard?
Well, you know what it is. It's a little organ in the chicken.
Yeah.
We were debating on the team, like, what does a gizzard actually do? But it's basically, the ones that the team partaked in, we had, it was, they were like chewy chicken nuggets. Basically. But they're deep fried. So
right.
Come on.
They're deep fried. You could deep fry a bicycle tire and it would taste pretty good. Yeah. So.
Exactly.
So this is basically the filler in like a chicken nugget, right? I mean,
it could be.
It's kind of like, I use that too. Just grind it up a little bit, put it with white meat, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of my younger staff members who were sort of having the realization that this tastes really a lot like a McDonald's chicken McNugget, and what does that mean about what's in a McDonald's chicken McNugget? They were sort of, the light bulb was going off.
Right.
No, I don't know.
Right. We get, look, again, things taste good when they're deep fried. Don't ask any questions. Just eat it.
Kind of like a hot dog. You really don't know what it is, and you don't want to know.
Well, now, of course, Elissa, your family knows all about hot dogs, but
please don't turn the conversation.
All right, I'm sorry.
But I'm sure we can say that there are no gizzards in hot dogs. Okay.
Right. Now the serious stuff.
Yeah.
We'll go from gizzards to guns.
Yeah.
How about that?
Your Safe Guns, Safe Kids Act was recently passed, part of the Protecting Our Kids Act, passed through the House. It's a common sense piece of legislation, basically just saying, hey, gun owners need to safely store their firearms. Why is something that is so common sense so political?
Well, I think it's not that this individual bill is very political, and to be honest, this one came directly out of my experience of being the representative of Oxford, Michigan, and the exact scenario we had in Oxford where the parents of the shooter, left the gun open. Their child had mental health issues, and the child took it to school, used it to kill 4 of his classmates. And now the prosecutor in Oakland County is trying to go after the parents, and they have been in jail since that incident. There's just no case law to go after those parents in a really clear way. So we came up with this law, right? I don't think that there's much controversy about the specifics of this law. It's just the issue of gun safety legislation, period, that sends people in Washington to their corners. And I think the good news that I really felt last week, and I'm feeling it again this week, frankly, since the Uvalde shooting, is I've had more calls from like staunch, hunters, sportsmen, Second Amendment, conservative Republican folks who are like, look, I enjoy what I do with my life. I enjoy the weapons I have in my home, but that doesn't mean I don't care about protecting our babies. And I think that's been really heartening to me, is I've gotten more of those calls in the past 3 weeks than in the preceding 4 years.
So, again, the legislation that was your legislation, the Safe Guns, Safe Kids Act, it was rolled into the Protecting Our Kids Act, a package of bills. that did a number of things, such as raising the purchasing age for semi-automatic rifles from 18 to 21, some other issues. It passed through the House. Its future in the U.S. Senate is less certain, where you're going to need 10 Republicans to sign on to this in order to break through the filibuster. Do you sense that there's been any movement on that in terms of getting 10 Republicans to say, hey, something as simple as maybe we should say that, if you can't buy alcohol till you're 21, maybe you can't buy a semi-automatic rifle till you're 21.
Yeah, the kind of new thing that's going on right now is that we actually do have agreement in the Senate on it's not a revolutionary massive package. It's a moderate compromise package, but we do have agreement, and we have at least 10 senators 10 Republican senators who helped negotiate it and have signed on. And I think that's where I come from on this issue is, look, what I think, as someone who grew up with guns, as someone who carried a Glock and an M4 in 3 tours in Iraq, what I feel like we should be putting in place may be different than someone else, but I will take any forward movement on this issue. And right now we seem like we have a deal, and it's aiming towards, it looks like a vote next week in the Senate. So if that holds, and that's an if, but if that holds, it'll be the first gun safety legislation that we do, particularly around the issues of mental health and keeping people who are mentally ill away from weapons in a generation. So it's a big deal if it happens, and that's what we're all focusing on.
Well, let me ask you this: as far as the age from 18 to 21, some may argue that, well, my kid can go off and fight for the country, put a gun in his hand or her hand at that age. Are you getting that type of questioning as far as the age goes? Has that been an issue? Yeah.
There's always going to be someone who pops up and says that. I just want to be clear, though, that right now, because of a weird kink in history, to buy a handgun, you have to be 21, but to buy a semi-automatic, you could be 18, which I don't think most people think sounds right. And then secondly, the argument on drinking or any of those things, you can't rent a car at 18 by yourself. You can't do a bunch of things. You can't drink at 18 by yourself, and there's a bunch of things that we withhold from folks who are 18 years old and doing other things. But I'd be even willing to consider, if there was a strong push that someone who's professionally trained in the U.S. military to handle a weapon needed an exception and wanted a weapon, then I would be open to that, because they're a young person who's proven themselves capable. But I don't think anyone feels great about the mental health of our young people right now, and I don't think that raising the age to have it match a handgun is as detrimental as maybe people think it is.
Well, the last 2 mass shootings, major mass shootings, I should say, because there's mass shootings, unfortunately, almost every day in this country. But, the Buffalo shooting and then Uvalde as well. These were both young men under the age of 21. And many of the other previous mass shootings involved men under the age of 21 with a semi-automatic rifle who were doing this. And so, again, what seems to be common sense has gotten mixed up in politics. And the bill that you were talking about, the forward progress that you were talking about in the U.S. Senate, does not include, my understanding is, does not include raising the age to 21. But as you were saying before, any progress, you have to take it.
Yep, and what I feel like my job in this conversation is to, if the Senate has a deal, it'll come back to the House, since it's a different version than what we approved. It'll come back to the House, and what I'm spending my time doing in the Problem Solvers Caucus, in this bipartisan caucus I'm in, equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, we're having conversations with the senators who negotiated this thing now, so that it can be bipartisan when it comes back to the House. And I might have Democratic members who say, well, this bill doesn't go far enough for me, so I'm going to vote against it because it's not enough. And I am just over that. I just am any forward progress at this point. If you have to look the kids in the eye in Oxford, you will take any forward progress.
Sure. And I guess, if people that are decrying extremism in the GOP on issues where it's it's my way or the highway, I guess on the Democratic side that is also an issue. It cannot be on this issue particularly. It cannot be my way or the highway. Any forward progress has to be something that you would want to be a part of.
Yep.
Speaking of my way or the highway and extremism, the January 6th hearings that are going on, there's certainly been a lot of that's come out from that so far, and I think there's probably going to be a lot more that comes out from that. I guess just generally speaking, what's your take on what we've learned so far?
Yeah, where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think that it's important that we have a record, a historical record of what happened on January 6th as one of the people that, ran and locked herself in her office and watched all my other peers, including the ones who pretend it didn't happen, who watched them and their staff haul ass around the Capitol to get away from these people. I think it's important that a country has a record. I think if you read any history or take any history class in high school, you know that when we have this kind of violent event in our nation's capital, in the Capitol building, you have to have a record. Do I think it's going to, change everybody's mind? No. But do I think it's important to do? Yes. And I think in particular, the report that they produce at the end of this process, which is, of course, the intent of any of these commissions, is to write a report and then to make sure there's full accountability. Right now, we've had a lot of people who came into the Capitol, who were part of the riot, part of the insurrection, who were, violent and inside the building. They've been prosecuted, lots of them. But, like always, there's not a whole lot of accountability for the people who organized it, for the people who incited it. So I think that's the conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to meet a legal standard, as everything does. But for right now, I think it's just an important conversation for us to be having as a country.
There's a growing consensus, though, that, and where do you stand on this, that the person that maybe incited this, the President, Trump, that he should be indicted. What do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to look at, it has to meet a legal standard. And look, I was in the Capitol. We were all watching his speech live when he was encouraging people to go, and they did go. And he didn't, now we know from his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, that there were just hours and hours where he just was, the president refused to get on TV and calm things down. And where I actually went up to a couple of my Republican peers this past couple of weeks after the text came out, because you can see and read the text, and they called the chief of staff and they said, please, Mark, get the president on television. This is not right. Get him to do something. And he just didn't. For hours, and 5 people died. So it's not, that it was just a cosmetic thing. So look, there has to be accountability, not just for the lowest level folks, but for anyone who organized it. And I think we have to watch it, and we have to see if it meets a legal standard.
Let me ask you this, Rio, before we switch gears here. As someone who's had a gun in her hand, has fought for the country, has been in the military, and you're running and hauling ass to get to your office, what was going through your mind? Was it just that this is unbelievable that this is happening, or?
Well, just to clarify, I wasn't in the military. I was a CIA officer that was trained to travel along with the military and help them understand the groups to go after. I was trained in weapons and defensive driving and combat medicine for an extreme situation, right? If we were being, ambushed or attacked, I wasn't fighting on the front lines. I had to be able to protect myself, and luckily never had to do that. The military did that for me. But I think the crazy thing was using the training that I had to go on those 3 tours to Iraq in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And in particular, the thing they drill into you, particularly when you were preparing for, we had a lot of roadside bombs and roadside ambushes going on at the time of my first tour. The mantra that they drill into your head is get off the X. Like, if there's an attack happening, you get off the bullseye, you get off the target, you get off the X. And I was, really close to the floor of the house and heard screaming and yelling and breaking glass and something, a big boom that my brain interpreted as a flashbang, a crowd control measure. Later found out it was a gunshot, but my brain just went into get off the X. get the hell out of here. And I turned around and, hauled it back to my office and locked myself in. And then I got a panicked call from one of my fellow Michigan representatives saying, I can't get back to my office. I don't know. I said, come here and we'll lock ourselves in. Did I ever think I'd be using that or click back into that in the U.S. Capitol? Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Well, right, you said it's one thing if you're in Iraq on a mission to have that feeling. It's another thing when you're in the U.S. Capitol. Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
I think it's a safe place. But.
I know we only got for a little bit more here, and I think one thing we did want to ask you about, another thing, day to day. I mean, we're talking about gun control, and we're talking about, January 6th. Important issues, no doubt about it. Day to day, what people are feeling is these inflationary pressures, high gas prices, high food prices. Fingers being pointed in all directions on this issue. Is there any relief in sight, and what's going to bring it?
Well, the thing that, certainly on gas prices, which is undergirding everything, it's the number one thing I hear about. People in the district that I represent drive sometimes on average 40 miles one way to work. So you can imagine that it's affecting every single person that I talk to in some form or fashion. If there were a silver bullet to bring down the price of oil, then we would have fired it, right? There would have been someone saying, okay, let's do this immediately. The thing that I would like President Biden to be a bit more aggressive on some of the things that he did, opening up the Strategic National Reserve. He can do that again. He can do that and open it for longer. He can suspend the federal gas tax, which is a bill that I introduced. That's like to maybe save us about 19-20 cents a gallon. It's not perfect, but it's something. There's a few other things that he can do. The one that I'm watching, though, is that he's now announced he's going to Saudi Arabia. This is very interesting, right? He has been kind of cold with the Saudis. They're not the nicest bunch, and they've been, we have credible information that they basically assassinated an American citizen, an opposition member, and but I think that the president flying to them is a really important signal, and to me, it's clearly about turning on the taps, turning on the gas, the oil. The Saudis are purposely keeping production low because they know that the price of gas being so high really helps them make up for all their losses under COVID. So to me, like if in terms of hopefulness on bringing down the price, one, we got to take the federal gas tax, make it a holiday, suspend it. And then two, I'm really interested to see how much we can turn the taps on in places like Saudi Arabia.
What's his hesitation on putting that pause on the tax for the gas tax?
I mean, it's revenue for the federal government, right? So when you want to spend, you have to actually have revenue to do that, and it's not perfect policy. I'll be the first one to say that. If it were pain free, we would have done it. But it means if we want to pay for other things, and Lord knows the federal government has lots of bills, then you need that revenue coming in. But the governor of Michigan has said that she supports it. We've been pushing it. It's myself and Dan Kildee from Michigan who are the sponsors of it, and Senator Stabenow on the Senate side. So it's a very Michigan-focused initiative, and I think it might be not imperfect, but it's something to help.
Is there any thought about bringing in the heads of the oil companies and bringing them in front of Congress to talk about their role in this? Because they're making record profits on this, and that there is a notion that somehow they are profiting off this and keeping these prices high.
Yeah, we know that's true, because the price of a barrel of oil is the same as it was, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, but the price of gallon of gas is about $1.50 higher than the last time. So they're definitely also making up their losses. We suggested this, coming in front of Congress, but also the president rounding them up and just having a closed-door conversation in the Oval Office. I mean, use the power of the office to throw your weight around and make it so that these companies feel, especially the American companies, feel like, hey, this is my country here that's really suffering, and I need to take a more moderate stance. So this is another thing that we've been pushing President Biden on, and it's just, Look, maybe I'm a more aggressive person, but I want to see more action and more energy around bringing down the price of oil.
Well, I think most of us stand with you on that. It's getting the president to see that.
And he's one part of a large.
He's part of the equation. The equation. Like you said, throwing his weight around a little bit. Let's get the cojones out and do something here. I mean, we're looking at they're talking about the price of gas going up to $6 a gallon here in Michigan within the next month or so. I mean, we've seen these jumps, so something needs to be done. Whether he can do it quick enough, I don't know. And even the trip to Saudi may not do it.
Yeah, I think my approach to this is look, a lot of issues in this life are complicated, but get caught trying, right? I mean, just try, just throw something against the wall and see what sticks, and just be working until you figure out that magic formula that helps the consumer. And I think that's what I would like to see more of.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. We really appreciate you talking to us, and we hope to talk to you again and catch up on issues once everything is resolved. Once gas prices are down to $2 a gallon, and the war in Ukraine is over, and Republicans and Democrats have all come together.
You bet.
So we'll never talk to you again.
Basement, guys.
All right. Thanks.